Today we're taking you back to one of the most infamous chapters in British crime history. Across the table from me sits a man whose name once sent a chill through the East End, a man who, alongside his twin brother Reggie, built an empire known as the Firm, ruling the streets of London with a mix of fear, loyalty, and ruthless precision. This is the life story of Ronnie Kray, from bare-knuckle fights in bomb-site backstreets, to West End nightclubs filled with celebrities and politicians, to the bloody moments that cemented his reputation. For the next hour, you're going to hear his version, the life as he lived it in his own words. No scripts, no sugarcoating, just a rare, unfiltered sit-down with one of Britain's most notorious gangsters.
First thing, I don't do this sort of thing often. Most of my life I kept my business to myself and the people who needed to know. But time changes things, and maybe there's a bit of value in telling it straight for once. I'm Ronnie Kray. Me and my twin brother Reggie ran the Firm, ruled the East End for years, and mixed with everyone from market lads to movie stars. We made money, made enemies, and made sure no one forgot our names. I'm not here to tell fairy tales or dress it up like some glamour story. There was money, yes, but there was blood too, plenty of it. This was our life, and if you were in it, you played by our rules or you didn't play at all. So you want to hear it? I'll tell you. From the back streets to the blind beggar, from champagne in the West End to a prison cell, this is my side of it, and I won't be pulling any punches.
Ronnie, what was it like growing up in the East End in the 1930s and 40s?
Growing up in the East End back in the 30s and 40s, it weren't for the faint-hearted, I'll tell you that. You had the docks, the bomb sites, from the walls still fresh, kids playing football in the rubble like it was a park. Poverty was normal, no one thought of it as being poor, it was just life. Our old man was away with the army most of the time, and our mum, she was the anchor. She kept us fed and made sure we looked sharp even if we didn't have a penny to rub together. Respectable appearance, that was important to her, and it stuck with me. The East End then was all about two things: looking out for your own and standing your ground. If you let someone walk over you once, they walk over you forever. Me and Reg learned that early. We weren't the biggest kids, but we were the ones who'd swing first. People talk about the glamour later on, the suits and the nightclubs, but the roots of it all were right there on those cobbled streets, ducking the coppers and scrapping with anyone who fancied themselves a hard man. That's where we learnt the game, and once we learned it, we never played it small.
How did you and Reggie first start making a name for yourselves on the streets?
Me and Reggie, we didn't just wake up one morning as the Cray Twins, everyone knew. It started small, street fights, bare-knuckle stuff. We had a knack for it, and people noticed. We were boxers first, proper amateurs, and we were good, quick hands, mean streak. And we always had each other's backs, that's what set us apart. Most lads fight alone, we fought like we were one man with four fists. From there it was a natural step into collecting for the local bookies. I wanted lads who could keep punters in line and stop anyone thinking about skipping on their debts. We were perfect for it. We didn't need to say much, just walking into a room together made people think twice. The turning point was when we started taking over doors at the clubs. You control the door, you control who comes in, who goes out, and what happens in between. That's where we started meeting faces from the West End, actors, singers, and more importantly, people with money. By then our names carried enough weight that folks started saying, best not cross the Twins. And once people start saying that, you're not just street lads anymore, you're a problem for anyone who wants your patch.
Was there a moment when you realised you and your brother weren't just street kids anymore, you were feared?
You know, there was one night I knew me and Reggie weren't just the local tearaways anymore. We were something people were starting to fear. It was at this dance hall in the East End, must have been 52 or 53. Some bloke, big fella, mouthy, decided he was going to have a go at Reggie over a girl. Before I could even get across the floor, Reggie had him on his knees, blood pouring from his nose. I put my arm round the lad, whispered something I won't repeat, and he just didn't even look at us when we let him go. What stuck with me wasn't the fight, we'd had dozens before. It was the silence that followed. The whole hall packed with people, and you could hear the band stop playing mid-song. All eyes on us. No one said a word. From that night on, it was different. People stepped aside when we walked into a room. Word travels quick in the East End, and the story got bigger every time it was told. By the time it made the rounds, we weren't just a couple of boxers anymore. We were the Krays. And from then on, nobody wanted to test us, at least not twice.
The East End had its own codes back then. How important was loyalty in your world?
Loyalty in the East End back then, it weren't just a nice word you threw around, it was a currency. You could be skint, you could be on the run, but if the right people were loyal to you, you'd never go without a roof, a meal or a pair of hands when things got messy. For me and Reg, loyalty was everything. You back your people no matter what. That meant if someone touched one of ours, they were touching us, and that was a death warrant in those days. It also meant keeping your mouth shut. The worst thing you could be called was a grass. You could nick a man's money, even his bird, and maybe one day he'd forgive you. But grass him to the old bill and you were done, finished. We built a firm on that principle. Didn't matter how tough you were, if we couldn't trust you, you were out. Sometimes out meant walking away, sometimes it meant something else entirely. Loyalty kept us alive longer than muscle ever did. But it's a two-way street. You expect it, you better give it. That's how we saw it.
How did the firm come together, and what made your crew different from other London gangs?
The firm didn't just pop up overnight. Me and Reggie had been collecting faces for years, hard lads we'd met through boxing, the doors, the racecourses. Each one brought something to the table. Some were good with their hands, some were good with a blade, and some could talk their way out of anything. At the start, it was mostly blokes from the East End, but once we started running the doors in the West End nightclubs, we pulled in fellas from all over London. We didn't care where you were from. If you could earn, and you stood by your mates, you were in. The firm was more than just muscle. We had blokes sorting out protection, others moving gear, some working on the books to make things look clean. Everyone knew their role, and if they didn't, well, they found out quick. What made us different was unity. Other mobs in London had rivalries within their own crew, lads fighting for position, stabbing each other in the back. We didn't have that. You crossed one of us, you crossed all of us, and that's why the firm ruled the East End for as long as it did.
Protection rackets were your bread and butter. How did you keep businesses in line without drawing too much heat early on?
Protection was our bread and butter in the early days, but you couldn't just go bashing heads and expect to last. The trick was making people want your protection, or at least believe they did. We'd walk into a pub or a shop, have a quiet word with the owner. We'd point out how rough the neighbourhood was getting, how accidents happen when no one's watching. Then we'd say, course, if you had someone looking out for you, those accidents wouldn't happen here. It weren't a threat, not on paper anyway, more like a friendly suggestion. We kept it low-key at first, didn't smash windows or burn places down unless someone was being stubborn. Most times all it took was us showing our faces now and again, buying a drink, shaking hands with the regulars. People got the message. The other key was keeping the coppers sweet. We had blokes in uniform, we'd turn a blind eye for a price, so if a shopkeeper tried to complain, it never went anywhere. Before long our patch was locked down. You wanted to open a business in certain parts of the East End, you paid us, and if you didn't, you wouldn't last a month.
You were known for mixing with celebrities and high society. Did that make you feel untouchable?
Fear was a tool, same as a blade or a shooter. You didn't have to use it all the time, you just had to make sure it was there when you needed it. In the East End, people talk. If someone stood up to you and walked away in one piece, that story would spread and weaken you. But if someone crossed you and disappeared or got found in a state no one wanted to look at too long, that story travelled faster and it worked in your favour. We made examples. Not every week, not even every month, just enough that people knew the line and what happened if you stepped over it. That way, half the time you didn't have to lift a finger. The fear did the work for you. Me and Reggie had a rule. If you had to go to violence, make it decisive. Don't give them a chance to come back. That's why the firm held our ground for so long. Nobody wanted to be the next example.
What role did fear play in controlling your territory?
Certain doors in the West End, the whole game changed. We weren't just dealing with dockers and market traders anymore. We were rubbing shoulders with actors, singers, lords and ladies. People you'd normally only see on the telly were now shaking our hands, buying us drinks. Me and Reggie liked the showbiz life. We'd be at Esmeralda's Barn or the Astor Club and you'd have the likes of Barbara Windsor laughing at our jokes, or politicians slipping in for a quiet drink. We looked the part too, sharp suits, fresh haircuts, never a crease out of place. Did it make us feel untouchable? Of course it did. When you've got MPs having champagne with you on a Tuesday night, you start thinking you're bulletproof. And truth be told, for a while we were. The thing about celebrities is, they like a bit of danger. We gave them that, but in a way that made them feel safe. They got their thrill, we got our connections. And the old Bill had to tread careful because half the people in our company had influence in high places.
Let's talk about George Cornell. That night in the Blind Beggar pub. What was going through your mind before you pulled the trigger?
That night in the Blind Beggar, I'd had enough of George Cornell. He'd been running his mouth for weeks, calling us every name he could think of, and not behind our backs neither. Straight to people he knew would bring it back to us. Worst part, he was thick with the Richardsons, our rivals down south. I walked into that pub, middle of the evening, people everywhere. As soon as I stepped in, the chatter dipped. I saw him sitting at the bar, pint in hand, smirking like he owned the place. He looked up at me and said, "Well, look who's here, the big fat poof." I didn't answer, didn't shout, just walked right up, pulled the chute from my coat and put one in his head, point blank. Pub went silent. You could have heard a pin drop, except for the glass slipping from his hand and hitting the floor. Then I walked out, calm as you like. No rush, no panic. That was the point. Let everyone there see it wasn't an accident, wasn't a fight gone wrong. It was a message. And believe me, it was heard.
There were stories about you walking into clubs or pubs and people going silent. Did you enjoy that reaction?
Yeah, that silence, I noticed it, and I won't lie, I liked it. It meant you had the room before you even opened your mouth. Me and Reggie could walk into a pub, a club, even a dance hall, and you'd feel it. Conversations would trail off, eyes would flick our way, people suddenly remember their drinks needed stirring. It weren't just fear, it was respect mixed with uncertainty. They didn't know if we were there to have a laugh or to settle something. Sometimes we'd play with it. We'd walk in, nice suits, big smiles, buy the first round for the whole place. Let people relax. Other times we'd come in cold, no smiles, no chit-chat, just sit down in the corner and watch. By the end of the night, word would spread that maybe we were looking for someone even if we weren't. That silence was power. It meant our reputation was doing half the work before we even got close to a problem.
You had a reputation for being more unpredictable than Reggie. Do you think that was fair?
People said I was the unpredictable one between me and Reggie, and they weren't wrong. See, Reggie could be charming, smooth, he'd think about things, weigh 'em up, maybe give someone a second chance. Me, I didn't see the point in dragging things out. If a bloke crossed the line, I sorted it then and there. No speeches, no warnings. That made people nervous because they didn't know which Ronnie they were going to get. The one buying champagne at the club or the one putting a shooter in your face in the car park. I suppose that's what kept a lot of people in line. Truth is, I didn't care about being liked. Respect was worth more, and fear kept you alive. I never saw myself as unpredictable. I had my own rules, I just didn't share them with anyone. And if you didn't know my rules, you didn't know how close you were to the edge.
Was there ever a time your temper almost cost you or the firm everything?
One of the clubs we had in the West End. Some wide boy from out of town decided to mouth off about the firm. He didn't know I was upstairs at the time. By the time I came down, he was laughing with his mates, pint in hand like he owned the place. I walked straight over, no talking, and cracked him across the face with glass. Place went dead quiet, blood everywhere. Thing is, I didn't stop. I went for him again and again, and if a couple of lads hadn't pulled me off, I'd have finished him right there on the dance floor. Problem was, it weren't just any mug. Turned out he had ties to some serious fellas outside London, and my little display nearly started a war we weren't ready for. Reggie gave me hell over it, told me I'd let my temper run the show. He was right too. We had to smooth it over with money, favours and a few handshakes we didn't really want to give. That was the thing with me. Most of the time my temper kept people in line, but once in a while it put us all in the firing line.
You had friends in politics, entertainment, even the police. How important were those connections in staying on top?
Connections, they were worth more than any shoulder or blade. Me and Reggie made sure we had friends in all the right places. Politicians liked to be seen with us because we brought a bit of glamour, and they knew we could keep certain problems quiet. Celebrities, they loved the danger, the thrill of having a drink with the Krays. And the police, well, let's just say not every copper's wages came from the Queen. We had uniforms who'd tip us off if the old Bill was going to raid a club. We had plainclothes who'd lose paperwork for the right price. If someone important wanted something buried, a debt, a scandal, even a person, we could make it happen. And in return, when we needed a favour, they didn't hesitate. That's what made us untouchable for a time. It wasn't just the fear on the street, it was the doors that opened for us in rooms most blokes from the East End would never even see.
Were there any rivals you truly respected?
Respecting rivals that weren't something I handed out easy. Most of them were mugs who either talked too much or thought they were tougher than they were. But there were a few. Frankie Fraser for one. Mad Frankie, he was with the Richardsons, so by rights we should have hated each other, and we did in a way. But the man was game. Didn't scare, didn't flinch, and he'd do his own dirty work. I could respect that even if we were on opposite sides. There were a couple of old school East End governors too. Blokes from before our time who ran things with a certain style. They kept their word, never grasped, and handled their business quiet. Different breed to most of the chances we came up against. Respect didn't mean friendship. If it came to it, I'd have put any of them in the ground same as anyone else. But I could at least nod and say, yeah, that one's got some bottle.
Did you ever feel pressure from other crime groups outside London trying to push into your territory?
London was our patch, especially the East End, but now and then you'd get outsiders sniffing around blokes from up north, even some foreign firms thinking they could muscle in. We had a simple policy: you could do business in our backyard, but only if we said so, and only if we got our taste. Some took the deal, paid up, kept their heads down. Others thought they could sneak in and start earning without showing respect. Those ones didn't last long. There was a crew from Birmingham once trying to run a little book out of a pub on our turf without asking. We paid them a visit, me, Reggie and a couple of the lads. No big scene, just a quiet word out back. When we left, they understood the message. You either work with the Krays or you don't work in London at all. That's the thing. Territory ain't just about geography, it's about reputation. People needed to know we'd defend ours at any cost. Once you lose that, you've lost everything.
What was the moment you knew it was over for the firm?
There's no single day you wake up and say it's over. But there was a moment I knew the tide had turned. It was after a night with Jack the Hunt McVitie. That job was messy, too messy, and it brought the wrong kind of attention. We'd been clever for years, kept things clean, made sure witnesses kept their mouths shut. But this was different. Too many people knew, too many whispers, and the old Bill weren't letting go. I remember sitting in one of our clubs, watching the door, seeing fewer and fewer familiar faces. Some lads stopped coming round, others were suddenly out of town a lot. That's when you know the fear that used to keep everyone in line starts working against you. People distance themselves so they don't get dragged under when you go down. By the time the coppers finally came for us proper, I'd already made my peace. The game had changed. We'd been kings once, but every king's reign ends sooner or later, and ours was running on fumes.
How did prison life change you, or did it?
Makes them. For others, it just confirms who they are. For me, it didn't change much. I was still Ronnie Kray, whether I was walking down Whitechapel Road or locked up behind a steel door. The thing was, my reputation came in with me. Most blokes inside either wanted to shake my hand or stay well out of my way. There were a few who fancied proving themselves, but that never lasted long. Word gets around quick in Nick. If anything, prison slowed me down. Out there you're always moving, dealing, watching your back. In here the days are long and you've got time to think, though. Sometimes that's worse than keeping busy. I read more, wrote more letters, thought about mum a lot, but I never let anyone see me weak. You show weakness inside, it spreads like blood in water. And for me, even in a cell, the rules didn't change. Respect was earned and fear kept you safe.
Did your reputation protect you behind bars, or did it make you more of a target?
My name protected me more than it hurt me, no doubt about it. When I walked into a new wing, blokes already knew who I was. Some wanted to be close, thinking it'd give them a bit of shine. Others stayed right out of my way, which suited me fine. Even screws, some of them anyway, treated me different, not friendly exactly, but careful. That said, a big name can tempt the wrong kind of idiot. You get the occasional young lad, looking to make his mark, thinking if he took a swing at Ronnie Kray, he'd be somebody. Those situations didn't last long. I made sure of it. Most of the time, my reputation did the work before I had to. A nod, a look, sometimes that was all it took. In prison, that's worth more than any blade you can get your hands on.
If you could change one thing about how it all went down, what would it be?
If I could change one thing, I'd keep the business cleaner. Less heat, fewer bodies, not because I'm squeamish, never was, but because too much blood brings too much attention, and attention's poison in our game. The trouble was I didn't have much patience. If someone crossed us, I wanted it sorted straight away. That attitude built our reputation, sure, but it also stuck up enemies and gave the old Bill more reasons to come knocking. Maybe if we'd stuck more to the clubs, the doors, the rackets that didn't leave corpses in the street, we could have kept it going longer. But that weren't who I was then. I lived by the moment, and in those moments I did what I thought needed doing. So yeah, if I had my time again, maybe I'd slow the hand a bit. But truth be told, I don't know if I was ever built for slow.
Do you think the East End will ever see another crew like the firm again?
No. The East End today ain't the East End we ruled. Different times, different rules. Back then it was tight-knit families, knew each other for generations, and the streets had their own law. You could run a firm, keep order, and as long as you didn't step too far over, most people accepted it. Some even liked it. Meant the wrong sort stayed out of their way. Now, too many cameras, too much technology, too many grasses looking for a quick payday, and the gangs that are about, half of them don't know loyalty from a hole in a wall. They'll stab you in the back for a fiver. The firm worked because we had discipline, structure, and a reputation you couldn't buy. That combination's gone now. So no, there'll be hard lads, there'll be troublemakers, but there'll never be another crew like us. The East End we ruled, it's gone for good.
And that's where we'll leave it. You've just heard Ronnie Kray's own words, a rare, unfiltered look into the rise and fall of one of Britain's most feared and talked about gangsters. Ronnie, I appreciate you taking the time to sit across from me and lay it all out. The beginnings, the power, the violence, and the end. For those of you watching, if you want to see more fantasy sit-downs with real mobsters and gangland figures from the past, let me know in the comments below. Who should we bring to the table next? And don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next conversation. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the next sit-down.